Hi everyone, Sandra here from Creating Spain, and today I wanted to show you something that I've managed to find which I think is a game changer. If you want to do any embossing with stencils, then this stuff is something that might well interest you. Now, it is actually supposed to be a book binding covers. You know when you get those spiral bound books and you have covers on them? This is what this actually is. And this one is an opaque version, which is great because I can at least see it when I've got it on my desk. And the other book binding covers I have are not opaque at all, and they tend to get a little bit invisible. So this is actually easier to use from that respect. The difference in it also is that my usual one is 240 microns. This one by the same manufacturer is 500 microns, and you can tell from the way I bend this is substantial. Now this also means that if you are making stencils, they are going to last longer because it is tougher, but it also means that if you're using stencils to emboss, you should be able to get a better emboss because it's that much thicker. It's tough, so it isn't going to suffer from pressure issues. I've used this one about half a dozen times this morning, and no, there's no pressure issues on this at all. It cuts pretty easily. Now this one didn't cut as well as one I cut yesterday, but I discovered that was because I had a tiny little bit of the plastic left on the blade when it had finished, and I'd removed it from the mat thinking that it had cut all the way through, but just this tiny little bit of plastic had got on it, so not all of it was cut absolutely all the way through. I didn't have to use a knife on it or anything, I just had to pull pieces off, but that's why there's a few little damaged bits, because it wasn't completely cut. So what is this stuff? This is the packet that I've got. I actually purchased 2 packets of this the other day, and I think this stuff is going to be invaluable. Now the other thing that you can probably use this for is as an extra shim in your cutting machine, your embossing machine, whatever, because it is substantial and it will probably be very good at protecting your cutting plates. I believe they do it in a transparent version if that's what you want. As I said, I think this is actually a reasonable solution because I can see it when I put it down. This is a very thin, flimsy piece of card. This is probably, I don't know, I would class it as something like 150 GSM maybe. It's given a pretty good impression on there. I wouldn't want to add an extra shim on this because I think it would probably end up tearing the paper. So this was done with the standard setup that I use on my Gemini, which is the cutting plate, the plastic plate, the silicone mat, the paper or card, and the stencil, and then the other cutting plate on top. I then tried it with this one, which is probably about 250. Got an absolutely beautiful emboss there. That is lovely. Card's not quite big enough, but it was a scrap I had hanging around, but a really nice emboss on that, and you can see it from the other side if you want to. I always like the bit sticking up, that's my preference. Then I decided to try on watercolor paper. Now this stuff is very tough to emboss normally. It's not the easiest of things to use for that, but it's good in that it takes a lot of pressure. It's not going to harm it. Watercolor paper, which this is, which is probably about 300 GSM if I remember rightly, and that has embossed perfectly too. And then just because I happen to have a lot of it hanging around, I thought I'll see what it does on photo paper, and it actually gives quite a nice result. It's embossed it well enough, but I quite like it because you have the gloss and you have the raised impression, and I think that's fun. What else can you do with this? Because my mind is working overtime. And one of the things I thought would be really quite nice is to make some eco-friendly tags. Now you might be thinking, Sandra, this is plastic. But the idea is with these, I think you could reuse them. So to that end, I've done a little bit of experimenting just with a very simple file that I made to show you the different effects. Now let me zoom in a bit because you're a bit far away. Right, the first one that I did was this one. Now you can possibly just about see the writing. It says love. And what I've done with this is I simply made the lettering a draw file. And when I put it to my scan and cut, I put in an engraving tool and lo and behold, you've got it engraved. Easy, simple, pretty quick to do. Now the next one, what I did was I made sure I sent it to the machine without being grouped so that I could edit the love part of it, and I just set it to do a basic standard fill, and it has engraved it so it's gone more opaque where it's engraved, and that I think really does look gorgeous. And then the last one that I did, I decided to put some vinyl on. And I cut this with the vinyl in place. So what I did was I put my plastic sheet on the mat, I put some white vinyl over the top, and then when it came to the love part of it, I had it on cut setting, but I put it on half pressure, or half cut, I should say. And that meant that it didn't cut all the way through, and it simply cut the love part of it out so I could weed it. Now, having said that, I will confess to a very slight little teensy weensy error. I was going to leave the love in place and take away the background, but because this is relatively thick and because I hadn't altered the pressure down enough, the letters were a little bit screwed up. So instead of completely junking it, I took the letters out and left the background, and that works just fine. So then what I did was I just peeled off the excess of the vinyl, removed the love part, so all it had to do was cut the outside again, and I obviously switched it off of the half cut so it cut the outside then, and that's come out really, really well, so I'm quite pleased. Now the other thing that they might be used for, aside from any kind of gift tags or even luggage tags, because this stuff is pretty durable and I think you could make luggage tags out of it as well. I was thinking if you were doing something like making someone some cookies and putting them in the cellophane, you could make some of the old-fashioned bread tags. You know, they were a bit like this, slightly bigger hole and an opening, and you simply just put it around the top of the loaf, or the top of the loaf wrapping, I should say, and it held it shut and you could take it off and reseal it again. It was quite a handy little thing. So I think that would be quite good fun. Now the other thing is, are they actually reusable if you want to write on them? Now being a plastic, you could write on these with an alcohol marker. So I have a test swatch here, and I put on it some reasonably deep red alcohol marker, and I've put it on both sides because one of these sides is, I think, a little smoother than the other, and I don't know if the alcohol will remove it. So I've got some rubbing alcohol and I'm going to see if I can remove this, because if I can, and easily, let's try the other side. No problem at all. It means you could actually have family gift tags and reuse them every year if you're doing Christmas tags or something. Maybe you cut them out in the shape of Christmas trees or Santas or something like that. You could actually reuse them because they would stand up to being taken off a parcel. You can, of course, if you want to, punch holes with something like this. Let me just get my punch action going. There we go, punches through easy enough. So you could set a rivet in it as well if you wanted to do that. So there we are, that is something else that you can do with these. I am just so thrilled I found them. I think they're going to be so useful. I am attempting to sort out this drawer. It had everything in here, but it's all kind of mixed up. And it's difficult to see exactly what I've got, and it's not very well organised. So I suddenly realised I have a sheet of this foam core left over. So what I've done is I have cut a strip which is the same depth almost as the drawer, and it is the exact width. Now, when it came to doing the width or the depth of the drawer, I simply used a ruler, measured it, and then allowed a tiny bit extra to make sure this is tight. It's not glued in here, but it's sure as heck not going to move when I've got it in position. In case you didn't realise it, as indeed it hadn't really occurred to me because I hadn't been thinking about it, I have the Memento teardrops, and you can't easily balance them up that way. If you put them that way, you can't see all your colours because they're going to be next to each other, and what's in front will hide what's behind, etc. So they really need to go that way up at the moment, which really isn't very great. And they do have these feet on them, so it makes me think that they are supposed to be stored. Oops. Okay, stand up that way, perhaps. And the other thing that makes me think this is probably the case is that these little colour tabs on the back, you can peel off the one that's on the lid and tear it off cleanly. So I think that's actually perforated already, and then you can stick it on the top and you will be able to see, like with these, which colour it actually is. So I'm going to do that with all these inks, and then I'm going to reorganise my drawer and show you the end result. Here's what's happened. I've managed to get all my inks on this side, and I love the fact that this looks so neat. Looks like I'm going to have to do another label for that one. That one just sprung off. But I love the fact that I can see whatever colours that I have, and they're not falling around all over the place. And I still have room for my other bits and pieces for the stamping on this side. I've got just a couple of little hole punches in here as well. So a lot neater, a lot easier for me to see what I've got, which was the object of the exercise. It occurred to me recently that some people may not know how to use a rolling ruler or of its particular use. The reason one wants a rolling ruler is simply so that if you want to make parallel lines, you simply roll it up and down your piece, and you can then mark your parallel lines. There is in this particular case, there is a plastic marker just along here, and what you do is you set it to 0. You could set it to another number if you want to. And I've got a side which says centimetres and a side which says inches. Quite unusual actually. These days we don't usually get rulers in both. So what you would do is you would line it up with the very edge of your card, and this may be slightly out because I haven't got my head directly over it, I'm doing it in front of myself, and then you roll it back until this bit here says 1 centimetre and it matches up with that line. And then what you know is that these edges here, if you mark them, will be 1 centimetre in from the top of the card. As I said, at the moment it may be slightly off because I'm looking at it at a strange angle. If you wanted it to be 2, then you keep rolling until the number 2 is in line with the marker on here. And that makes it a very useful tool. It's handy to have normal rulers, obviously, but a rolling ruler just gives you that extra bit of control, and it's easier to mark accurately with a rolling ruler if you're doing this kind of thing. Now, obviously, this one also has a degrees that you can mark as well. If I put this so that the baseline is along the edge of the card, I can mark the angles here as well if I wanted to do that. You have a little dot where you can mark the center, your start line, and then you have the various angles all marked, so you can do very accurate angles if you need to. Apart from that, it obviously has the straight edge, which this one has little holes in at the 1 centimetre mark, so you can accurately denote your centimetres if that's what you want to do. So again, with this one, if I wanted to, I could simply put it along the edge if I just wanted to mark the edge off, and I can mark it there. What that doesn't do, of course, is give me the distance down here, which the rolling part of it does, and that's why I particularly like it. Okay, so that was it, just a little quick one on rolling rulers. Hopefully you'll find it useful. Not everyone used them at school or can remember what they did with them if they did. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon. Take care now.